right, welcome everybody. We are doing House of the Rising Sun. And if you're new, if you're here live, welcome. And if you're new and you're watching on replay, welcome. A lot of new folks have joined in the last 3 or 4 weeks. I'm glad to have you here. This is a tune that we did early on. Very first tune we did actually back in the fall of 2019. And so it's the first time we're taking an older tune that we've already done. Well, they're all old tunes, right? But a tune that we've done before and looking at it again in the more recent format. So we'll take this tune through all the paces this month, looking at it with the horizontal 3-step, going on to do some sample solos and improvisation, and then finally wrapping up with some additional vamps and shout choruses to put together an arrangement using the 7-step arc. But today, we're going to talk about the tune itself and also some ideas for what to practice using the weekly practice planner and talking about some things that you can work on this month to complement the work that you'll be doing on the tune itself. So, oh yes, good point from Mike. If you're watching in the forum, be sure to go down to the bottom right hand of the video. Where would that be? Where's the bottom right? Anyway, go down to the bottom. I can't figure out which side it is. Go down to the bottom right and click on the YouTube icon and watch it in YouTube itself so that you can actually take part in the chat as well if you're watching live. And if you don't have the PDF yet, go to the intro and PDF page for this month's lesson and download. There's a little blue link off to the right, and you can download the PDF. I'm also going to be putting the PDF on screen as we go, so you can see what we're talking about. But for now, let me just do a little housekeeping here and get this over where I can see everybody's comments and also still see the PDF. So here we go with the stream. Okay, so let me see if this is the page we want to start on. Okay, so the practice planner, I've included a page, the main page of the practice planner here. You can also download the complete one with other exercises if you look at last month's material. But this is a more printer-friendly version. Someone told me that I was killing their printer, making them print out these big blocks of color. So sorry about that. I have a black and white printer, so I forget that that's what happens. But anyway, this is a way you can plan what you're doing for the week. And so the idea being, just a brief recap here, starting at the bottom actually with what you're going to work on. If you were going to work on the fundamental version of House of the Rising Sun this week, you would specify that here, that you're working on the fundamental, the 8 bars of the fundamental. It's kind of nice to put a purpose. I always like to remember why I'm working on things. And then maybe a metronome setting, just if nothing else, to get a starting point for where you are thinking you're going to be able to play it at. The metronome is not something to chase and catch up to. It's really just to calibrate where you're at and make sure that what you do know, it's really more to slow you down than to speed you up. If there's parts of the tune you can play better than others, you want to make sure you're not rushing during the parts you know and then slowing down for the parts you don't know. You want to try to move everything along at the same pace, even if that's as slow as the slowest part you need to play. And then as you get it all going proportionally, you can slowly begin to move it a little faster. And the metronome can help you calibrate that. It's just a measuring tool. So once you know what you're working on as far as repertoire, then you can work backwards and work on some technique and some fretboard knowledge based on what you're trying to get done in terms of repertoire. So just 1 or 2 exercises for technique. In this case, and on the next page, I'm going to show you what I mean. But in terms of tab. But, you know, for this, you might want to be looking at what kind of syncopation the melody involves. And it's a lot of playing pairs of notes. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? So a lot of 2 and 4 and kind of stuff. So that might be a syncopation that you work on this month, and maybe you incorporate crossing strings. Or maybe going from an open note to a fretted note. Or both, or some combination. And then finally for the fretboard, the tune's in A minor, and the melody is played basically using the minor pentatonic scale with the addition of this one note here, the open B. So root, second, flat third, fourth, fifth, flat seven, and root. So for the exercises where you're going up one string at a time, you might work on playing the notes of A minor pentatonic on the high string, naming the literal note names, E, G, A, C, D, E, and then coming back down, which is always harder, E, D, D, C, A, G, E, and then going up the next string, C, D, E, G, A, and that's as far as you can get until you get to, because the 12th fret kind of cuts you off before you can get to that C. And then same thing on the third string. And then you could do it in terms of intervals. The fifth, the flat seven, the root, the flat third, the fourth, the fifth, flat seven, 5, 4, flat 3, root, flat 7. Again, you can go up, you can go down, you can cross strings, you can do anything you need to. You can keep it as simple as possible. You can make it as complex as you want to. But let's look at the next page. So here are, here's the basic idea. You're playing a steady bass in A, and if you were just playing on the downbeats, a good way to warm up for this syncopation over here in exercise 2 is just to play quarter notes on beats 2 and 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you can try taking this note on beat 3 and moving it up to the end of 2, like this. So 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, and 3, 4. So that way you're sort of seeing, oh yeah, this is a syncopation. It's not totally random. It's taking beat 3 and bringing it up a little bit, anticipating a little bit. And the same thing here, if you start with beats 1 and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we move up that downbeat, bring it in, right? Because the last thing that happens for the downbeat is beat 4. So we put the downbeat that was here. I know this is a little weird and tricky, but just try and humor me with this. We take this beat here, beat 1, and we move it to the end of 4. We move it up. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. So that's why I put this note in parentheses, because after the first time, you're not going to play it again. You're just going to play here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 4, and that will give you practice with the syncopation you need, the right hand coordination you need, or left hand if you're left-handed. Right? That's how the melody is phrased. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and all the way through that first phrase. Excuse me. So these are just a couple of basic syncopation exercises to get those ideas into your fingers. And if you wanted to take them further, I hate when that happens, that little blue bar, go away. If you wanted to take it further, you could do some of these things down here. I guess I'll just ignore it. You could combine 2, 4, 2 and 4 and, right? So 1, 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 2 and 3, 4 and. You could try to incorporate string crossing. So 1, 2, and. So 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and. Or backwards. Or combining open and fretted notes. Again, you don't have to make it that complicated, but you can make it, you can come up with as many variations as you like. Just pick 1 or 2 to work on for the week. As far as learning the notes, I sort of went over that, but here are some diagrams. Since we're mostly interested in how to use this for playing melodies and improvising, I've just put these on the top 3 strings, but you could obviously take it all the way down on the 4th, 5th, and 6th strings if you wanted to use that as an additional way to learn the fingerboard. But right now, the idea is to put on a metronome to keep yourself on a kind of calibrated clock and play each note and name it as you go. So E, G, A, C, D. And I made the full blues scale, not the pentatonic scale. The only difference between the A blues scale and the A minor pentatonic scale is this note here, E flat, which is the flat 5. So A, C, D, E flat, E, E flat, D, C, A, G, E, right? And then the same thing going up the B string and going up the G string. Now you could, again, just mix these up however you like, but the next most important thing to do is to look at them in terms of intervals. So here's the exact same diagrams, only here they're labeled 5th, flat 7, root, flat 3, 4, flat 5, 5, and so on. So those are some things you can choose from as for technique and fretboard exercises. Then we have the fundamental itself, and what we're going to look at right now is the horizontal 3-step. So this is the idea of taking apart the tune and putting it back together in 3 steps. First, isolating the bass, which is what we've got here. So here's just the bass. So first we're going to isolate the bass, then we're going to isolate the melody, and then we're going to put them together and look at where thumb and fingers are playing together on the downbeats and where the fingers are playing syncopated notes in between. So here we've got, it's an 8-bar tune, and usually I like to try to do 4 bars on a line just so it's easy to see the first and the second half of the tune, but the melody gets a little thick and it in the embellished version, and so I did everything split up over 3 lines. But here's the first 4 bars to here, and the second 4 bars to here. So the bass is going A, and then D over F sharp, back to A minor, and then to E. Bar 5, we've got A minor again, to D with F sharp in the bass, and then quickly A on 2 beats, E 2 beats, A minor for 2 beats, E for 2 beats. And so depending on how you're going to be fingering it, you might want to practice using your middle finger for the F sharp bass or your thumb. For some people, the thumb wrap is kind of a pain. If that's you, don't worry about it, although maybe try it, and the only way to get good at it is to do it on and off over time. So something to consider. But you can play the fundamental melody with the middle finger for the bass note. So first you would go through and just play the bass, and you want to do that because the bass it's telling you the groove, it's telling you the chord progression, it's the underpinning of the tune. It's what you're going to use to sort of calibrate where the beats are in the tune. And then after you do that, the next thing you want to do is isolate the melody. So here you can see where some of the syncopations are and where the double stops are. And you can just start to see where the phrases are too. So first phrase, next phrase. So we've got this single note opening, and then these double stops as kind of an answer. And then we have really a kind of a repeat of that phrase, again with the double stops. And then finally the answer to everything. Well, the answer, not the answer to everything, like in a cosmic sense, just the answer to what we've been playing so far. So 4 phrases. And if you can start to play them, learn them and play them as phrases, it will really help you remember what's going on. And it's a, it's a tune with words. So if it helps you to think of a verse of the song and think of the phrasing that way, then, that's cool too. There's all those sort of legendary stories about saxophone players like Ben Webster and Lester Young who, memorized the lyrics to the tunes they were playing, even though they were instrumentalists, because it helped them, they said, really inhabit the tune and the meaning of the tune and all of that. So nothing wrong with that. If it's good enough for Ben Webster, it's good enough for me. So just going through these, making sure you don't use your thumb, right? And if that means resting your thumb on one of the low strings to keep it out of the way. So hearing those as 4 distinct phrases, thinking about how they might, how to get each melody to have its own kind of rise and fall, and to sort of hear the internal, the call and response between the phrases. And then you're going to, step 3, put them together. And so these vertical bars just show any place there's a pinch, any place where the thumb and fingers are playing at the same time. Because any place that they're not, that means the finger is operating independently in between the bass notes. And I put the count below so you can really count out 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and put it all together. So pinch, 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 pinch. Oh, sorry. Pinch, pinch. Right? So that's just a way to look at it in a certain amount of detail and really see how the fundamental version is put together. So the one other thing I want to talk about, 2 other things. Forgot to put this in here. If you are going to sing the tune, here is one possible simple accompaniment style that you can do. And it's basically taking the chords, and you can see it's a very similar syncopated pattern the whole way through. This is something that I'll do when I'm singing. I guess I did this with the chords from the embellished version. So it's just providing an accompaniment. It's a little bit syncopated. You could sing the melody over this because you're not playing the melody anymore and you want to stay out of the way. But it's more than just stripping out the melody and playing the bass, right? So it's just basically grabbing a chord on the first beat of each measure with thumb, index, and middle, and then a bass, and then anticipating the next chord by half a beat on the and of 2. So we're going to the C over G, and so picking that on the and of 2, and the bass comes in on beats 3 and 4. Then it's the exact same routine the rest of the way through. Here's D over F sharp. Here's the F chord. And that's a tricky switch. You can just go to you can call it a D minor 6 chord if you want to, and just drop the bass and keep the rest the same. But you can also go to the F chord, then back to A minor to C, E sus, E7, and then A minor to C again, D over F sharp to F, B minor 7, so root, flat 7, and minor 7, root, flat 3rd, and flat 7, to E7, F7, and if that's too hairy, you can just use the chords from the fundamental, right? Now the problem is that A chord without the melody sounds like it could be A major, right? So maybe you could use the ring finger, grab 3 notes. On the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd string. Right? And it'll back up the vocals really nicely. So there's that. And then finally, wait, where's the vamp? What has happened to the vamp? Did I skip the vamp? No, it's back here. Okay, still trying to figure out what order to put all this in now that I've added some new things into the PDF. So the vamp, if you want to start working on that too, so that you have a vamp and a version of the melody, so that you can kind of stagger them and do like vamp, fundamental, vamp, and get a little arrangement going. This vamp, so we're going to talk more about vamps in the 3rd week, but short version, a vamp is a 2 to 4 chord cycle that you create outside the structure of the tune itself. And so it can be kind of whatever you want, but it's pretty typical to go from 1 to 5 and back, or from 1 to 4 and back, or even to go from 1 to 4 while keeping like the root in the bass. But in this case, we're doing 1 to 5. And so we're going to have 2 beats on A minor and 2 beats on E7. And for the A minor, we're just going to play an A minor chord. For E7, we're going to play E7 with the flat 7, the 3rd, and the flat 13, which is the C note here. So we're going to keep this note C on top, which is called a common tone, meaning it's held in common by this chord voicing and this chord voicing. And then we're going to do this little rhythmic groove, which involves another kind of anticipation on the end of 2. 1 and 2 and. So bass and then the index on the 4th string. So thumb, index, and then a pinch with the thumb and the middle and ring finger on 2nd and 3rd string. And then index comes back in, index, middle, and ring are going to grab 4th, 3rd, and 2nd string on the end of 2. And then the bass comes in, and then on beat 3, you go back to an ordinary E chord with no flat 13. That's these 4 beats right here. So 1 and 2 and 3, 4. Then the second time, we're just going to change that last chord, putting the pinky on top. So that now it sounds like a 2-measure idea, right? Because first it goes down, then it goes up. And then the last time before you're going to go to the melody, we're just going to wrap it up by going to the pinky on the end of 2. And we're out. So the whole thing. Which leaves you done on beat 3, just in time to play and go into the melody. So, I forgot to set my clock so I could keep track of time and not talk for too long. But but it's just 3 o'clock. So that's good. Okay, so now you would have, say, the vamp, the fundamental, the vamp, the fundamental, and the vamp, which would let you do, let me get rid of this, come back. So, right, so you've got this little structure already, which we can start to build on and build out going forward. You could even, the next thing you might do is work on the embellished version and put that in for the second time through the melody. And then, next week we'll look a little bit at some soloing ideas. And then the week after that, we'll look at some shout chorus and vamp ideas. So lots of places you can go with it. But the first thing is just to get started, learning the melody, putting the bass and the melody together in an organized way, and then doing some of these exercises that can help you with that. So that is mostly what I came to talk about. And I did not see a lot of questions posted in the forum, but if you've got questions about any of that now, I would be happy to answer them, especially if you're new and just kind of finding your way around. Lots of times, if you've got questions just about when things are happening or how they're happening or where to find them, a lot of times the fastest way to find that out is just to post in the forum, because there's invariably someone who knows exactly where the bodies are buried and will reply pretty quickly. But this is always a good time to to get your questions answered, especially if it's about the material at hand. So yeah, we've got a few. We have a few other tunes in the archive that are in A minor, where you can also. So you can go back, since we did this tune already. There are additional ideas and exercises if you're looking for more stuff to work on now. You can go back and check out all the earlier exercises from October 2019. There's also there's a tune called Minor Details, which is also in A minor. There's a version of St. James Infirmary. I noticed Ray mentioned you can. Was it Ray who mentioned you could? Wim mentioned you could do Travis picking, and there's an arrangement of St. James Infirmary that we did with alternating thumb with Travis picking, and then we also did an arrangement of You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch back in December. Different chord progression, but similar idea also with the steady bass. So there's other things you can relate it to and other tunes. Like once you've got some of these voicings and licks and syncopations down, you can apply them to other tunes pretty readily. So thanks for those observations, everyone. Okay, so from Mike, can you demonstrate the rake you do with your first and middle fingers? And has anyone some history on the House of the Rising Sun? I do, yes, more than you'd ever want to know. Let me address that quickly, because that's a good point, and then I'll I'll address Mike's question. So, and someone else pointed out that in the much maligned and forgotten blog that I used to have going here, I did early on post a playlist with about 11 versions of House of the Rising Sun. And the thing that I found out, excuse me, looking through and collecting versions of it, are that there are lots of different ways to play this tune all the way up till the 1960s. And then the Animals version comes out and is a huge hit. And every version since then is basically some kind of variation on the Animals version, which is the... right? So there's a book out called Chasing the Rising Sun, which is one person's kind of memoir about like getting interested in the song and like then going and like finding out as much as he could about it. The earliest recorded version is from 1937. It was a field recording. And the idea of, yeah, there it is. Yeah, the idea of New Orleans. The song was first recorded by a woman somewhere in Appalachia, maybe, or just west of there, Tennessee, Kentucky. I can't remember exactly what the story is, but one thing that the author of this book points out is that New Orleans was sort of this combination of like New York City, Babylon, and just like the generic big city for people in that part of the country. Like the river ran down to New Orleans, the trains all went to New Orleans, the shipping all came in and out of the Gulf. So New Orleans may not have even been meant literally, but more just like that's the place where things like that happen. Kind of like Sweet Home Chicago. Like I'm going, back to what are the original lyrics to that? It's like, back to that land of California, Sweet Home Chicago. It's like, California, Chicago, what are we talking about? But it's like California is this sort of metaphor for the promised land, and then Chicago being used sort of as like this weird translated to like Chicago being the place that you want to go. So that's the earliest version. There's versions from Leadbelly. There's a completely like up-tempo major key version from Woody Guthrie. All these different versions. But the story of how the Animals version becomes the version is that basically Dave Van Ronk, who really prided himself mostly on his skills as an arranger more than anything else, had come up with this version of House of the Rising Sun in the early 60s that he was playing in the Village. He probably got the idea of doing it in a minor key from the Josh White version, I think, but I don't have total chapter and verse on that. But I know Josh White did it in a minor key. And so it's apparently Van Ronk who came up with the idea of getting that descending bass line in there. And from there, the story goes, Dylan, who was in the Village and was learning from Van Ronk, not formally, but was hanging around with Van Ronk all the time, soaking up all the things Van Ronk knew, because he recognized that Van Ronk was like, everybody knew Van Ronk was kind of like the kingpin of guitar players in the folk scene at that time. And so Dylan basically got his record deal with Columbia, went and recorded Van Ronk's version of House of the Rising Sun, then ran into Van Ronk or called him up and was like, hey, by the way, like, you weren't planning on recording that, were you? Because I just put it on my Columbia record. And Van Ronk was like, well, yes, I was going to put it on my next Folkways album, but what are you going to do? So Dylan records it. It's on the first or second record. I can't remember. I think the first one. And anyway, that's, by the time the Animals come along, Dylan was big news in England and seems pretty bulletproof that they got the idea to do it with those chords from the Dylan version, and then it just becomes the version that everybody knows. And apparently also one of the things that prompted Dylan to go electric was realizing like, oh my God, like, not only with like the Beatles happening, all these other things that were obviously feeling much more alive and current than being a folky to Dylan, but hearing House of the Rising Sun done by a rock band made him realize like, oh yeah, that's a totally doable thing, right? So that's the not so short version of some of the lineage of the song. So the backward rake, let's see, what am I doing? What was the question? The rake you do with your first and middle fingers. I'll have to play. Oh, that. Yeah, I do talk about, there's a video floating around that I never found a good home for here on the site, but I did do a more of a breakdown of it, but it's basically so okay, so it's happening on 1 and 2 and 1, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. So it's happening, in that case, it's happening on the and of 2. So you're making the chord a little ahead of time, and then index finger starting on, say, the second string, and basically raking backwards, dragging across the strings, right? So not coming away from the string, but just playing the note, landing on the next string, playing the string, landing on the next string, and then picking with the thumb. So in slow motion, it's so. So you got to kind of get the new chord going. Same thing there, so. And again, just getting to the chord with the left hand, dragging back with the index across the top 4 strings, and then the thumb. So I guess it's the timing of it that is, it's leading into that downbeat. It's really coloring that downbeat, but it's coming from the and of the beat before. So you could practice just by going. Or. And that's really what it is. It's just kind of a coloration. It's honestly just kind of, it's a fairly unconscious thing at this point. I just do it sort of for the, you know, it's important. I mean, those kinds of things are important. They're what make it sound more musical. There's actually a video. Let me see if I can find it quickly and post the link. There is a video on on my YouTube channel. Let's see if I can find it. Rakes, triplets, and bass notes. Here, I'll put a link in. Oh, stop talking. Here we go. Here is more than you ever wanted to know about it. Yeah, that video has a bunch of stuff on all of this. Just the kind of the weirder, less, you know, some of the less tangible, well, they're not, they're still tangible. They're just harder to write down and notate kinds of things about how to do just some of the things that make it sound a little more slippery and a little more bluesy, right? And a little less literal. It's one of those things. So I hope that helps articulate what that's about. All those kinds of things. Another thing that's like that is sort of grabbing a choked third string to kind of on the and before the next note. I'm exaggerating, but it's those kinds of things instead of playing. It sort of gives it more of a, like, you get a little bit of that shuffle feel in there where I'm just letting my finger rest on the third string. it puts a little more swing into it too. So when it's up to tempo, right? So there's a lot of those kind of things. You don't have to worry about those at all. It's more important right now to just sort of get the melody down and get things on the beat and just sort of make sure you've got the pulse and you know where things are going. But if you're already past, if you already got the melody down, then that's a thing to work on. Oh yes, thank you, Jim. Yeah, I totally forgot. I don't know where he found all these, but yes. So Ricky Ramirez, the indefatigable and incredibly helpful Ricky Ramirez, he posted a link. There's like 10 or 11 spots from past live streams where Ricky gave like the actual go to this minute, this second, where there's a discussion about a specific like guitaristic thing like that, like snapping or raking or, all that kind of stuff. And that's a really, for better or worse, it's not for me to say, but it's where all that stuff is collected, which is a pretty good resource if you're into that kind of thing, because it just seems to come up sort of randomly. Oh yeah, there is that too. Bill Z pointing out, yeah, Crosby talks about Dylan freaking out hearing Tambourine Man done by an electric band. That is definitely also part of the Dylan conversion story, to be sure. Yeah, shouldn't have left that out. I've always been really fascinated by the Van Rock part of it. There's a point much later on in his career when Van Rock said, "I've been misquoted about Bob Dylan so many times I don't even get sick about it anymore." So, he's an integral part of the early Dylan formation. Oh, let me try to find where it's in the forum. That collection of links from Ricky, and I will try to grab it real quick and put it up there. Hang on, because that would be good to have in here too. He just posted it recently. Trying to find a place to put all these things in one place so that they're easy to find, and now I'm not finding them, but I'll put it in the, no, I can't find it quickly. I don't want to spend too much time on it right now. It's in the forum. I'll try to find a good link for that. Yes, Mayor of McDougal Street, co-written with, or as told to Elijah Wald, one of my favorite writers on blues. Really good book. Yeah. Okay. Time for a couple more questions. If anybody's got any, I'm going to just check and see if there were any that came in ahead of. Oh, stop. I keep hitting things I don't mean to hit and making them go. Hang on. Let me try to let me close this down. Okay. So if there's any further questions about this material, but that's the basic idea for this first week. Go through and do the horizontal 3-step if you need to. If you're comfortable just sort of looking at and reading through the main tune, the fundamental tune, then go on and look at the embellished tune with the descending bass and the chord substitutions. Take a look at the vamp, and then first steps towards putting the tune together could be going, vamp, fundamental, vamp, or maybe vamp, fundamental, embellished. No, vamp, fundamental, vamp, embellished, vamp. That's another way you could do it. And then looking at those syncopation exercises, starting to find those notes up the neck. If finding the notes up the neck is blowing your mind, just try to find the notes on the first 5 frets. But the idea is to take the planner and just go through and write out a couple of exercises for yourself, and then to specify, even if it's as simple as just writing down that you're doing the fundamental this week. There's something really effective about putting it in writing. I had this jazz improvisation teacher in college, and I was working on these charts, and I was like, do I need to make a chart for the drummer? And he was like, always make a chart for the drummer. So they really appreciate it. They don't like feeling left out. Even if it's just a piece of paper you wrote, swing it. He's like, make a chart for the drummer. So even if you know you're going to work on the fundamental this week, just write down under repertoire, fundamental, just write it down. Same thing for, whatever it is you're going to do this week for technique, for the fingerboard, just write it out specifically what you're going to do. Spend like 10 minutes on technique, 10 minutes on the fingerboard, 10 minutes on repertoire. Try to do that 4 or 5 days a week if you can. Try to do it, if you can, the same time of day. Just make an appointment to show up and do that. And then after that, that's just sort of like, that's to set a baseline, right? It's to do two things. One is to make it small enough that you can show up and go, yeah, I can find a half an hour. Another is just to make it look doable. Like, oh, it's only half an hour. Well, sure, I'll sit down and do that. And the third thing is like, yeah, you can play more than that. You can practice more than that. You can even go back and work on those things more after the first half hour, but do the half hour and then play. And that way you can like walk around the rest of the day going like, yeah, I practiced. Like I got that done. And that just has a cumulative effect that's really positive. So I recommend doing that. All right. If there are no more questions, I will play one more outro version of the song and wrap it up. If you're watching on replay, you can leave comments below or post in the forum if you've got questions about this week's material. We'll have the next live stream next Thursday, and additions to the PDF will be posted before the next live stream. So I hope that's all clear. If you're new, welcome again. Come say hello in the forum. You don't have to post a tune if that freaks you out, but do come and say hello, ask a question, introduce yourself, tell us what you're doing here and what you hope to work on. It's a very friendly crew in the forum, and it's a nice place to go and just find out what's going on and figure out where to find the things you're looking for and what you might want to work on next. All right. everybody. See you around the forum this week.